Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 163, cover dated November 1982. The cover by Dave Cockrum here, penciling and inking himself. This is an eye-catching cover. You know, you've got the trope of the young maiden menaced by the disgusting, ugly monster going on this particular cover, but there's very much a calling back to the first Alien movie, the only Alien movie that there was by this point in time, the first one by Ridley Scott, and the final sequence where Sigourney Weaver's character Ellen Ripley is on her own against the alien xenomorph. And there's just something about this cover that evokes that final scene with Ripley aboard the escape shuttle and menaced by that xenomorph. Also, what I like here on the cover is the use of color, and we've got the cold blues and purples of the ship that Kitty is on, and then the bright hot orange and yellow of the coloring of the Brood monster there as well. And one last little detail of this cover that I like from Cockrum is his rendering in ink of the texture of the scales of the Brood as well. Very interestingly rendered in the image. So let's open this one up to the splash page. We do get a splash page to start. This is Carol Danvers, and she was taken away at the beginning of the previous issue for tests and experimentation by the Brood, because they recognized her DNA as being not fully human, because she's got some Kree DNA mixed up in her as well from her former identity as Ms. Marvel. And so that's what's going on here. They're examining her, but she's been tortured in the process of the examination. So the title of this particular story chapter is Rescue Mission in this ongoing X-Men in Space Brood saga. And the creative team is Chris Claremont, scripter, Dave Cockrum and Bob Wiacek, artists. What that means is we're back again with Cockrum providing breakdowns and Wiacek finished art and inks, Joe Rosen, letterer, and Bob Sharon, colorist. So Orzechowski and Glenn Solver not involved in this particular issue. So let's continue getting into the story. And this is intriguing stuff here, where they are using their equipment to subject Carol to evolutionary modification. Her physical form we can alter at will, says the lead Brood technician. What has proven most fascinating is her psychic resistance. Though she's experiencing supposedly unendurable pain, she remains aware of all that transpires. She remains sane and defiant to an extent I would not have believed possible. So Carol Danvers has a very resilient, robust psyche, and she's able to take all that pain. So this Brood asked this other one to go get some refreshment for our guests, and off it flies. But who has finally made his way to the Brood City except for Wolverine? And he follows the techno, figures it'll be his ticket into the lab. So the lights go out, Wolverine pops his claws there, the sucker fights for all the good that it does him. So he flings the corpse of the Brood towards the compatriots back in the lab. And here he goes up against all those Brood in order to free Carol. And in the course of this, we learn something about both his own mysterious past, but also Carol's. Technically, I'm a superhero, he says in his first-person narration, one of the good guys. Before that, I was an agent, Canadian Secret Service. We know that. And before that, a commando. By birth, training, choice, I'm a warrior, the best there is. As this crowd quickly learns, I hear a moan, Carol. He continues in his first-person narration. And here we go. This is something that Claremont has been seeding, a past history between Carol Danvers and Logan. And he continues and says, we go back a ways, she and I. We worked together a lot when she was a part of US Air Force intelligence. She's a friend. When the Russian KGB captured her, I was one of the team that disobeyed orders and pulled her out. And that's something that Wolverine would refer to many times into the future, but a story that Chris Claremont never showed us, but one that he might get around to in the coming years as he revisits key parts of the original 16-year run on the title, with little kind of flashback stories that he does, one-offs, for Marvel in the present day. So we might ever see that particular story. I know I'd like to see it in print. He continues, "She was a lovely lady, skin and soul. Now she's barely recognizable as a human being. Her features flow like hot wax, shaped by some sicko sculptor's hands, shifting without rhyme or reason. Obviously the sleazoid gizmo's responsible. Problem is, had to shut the sucker down." So Wolverine's bearing his own scars from the previous issue, where he discovered he had a brood egg implanted in him by the Queen, and used his claws to remove it and his healing factor to recover, but he's left with this scaly skin as a consequence of the implantation. So he's there working on the alien technology, gives up on how to stop it, and so decides to trash it. "Instead, I cross my fingers and wreck everything in sight. Simple, effective, like me." I like that in Claremont's dialogue there. "I'm luckier than I deserve." So Carol emerges from the machine, the alien technology, in human form, so it appears. "I hope Carol feels the same," he says as he catches her. And then we turn the page and we see that something has been altered in Carol Danvers. So Wolverine tells her to relax, she's going to be okay. And she says here, "Fire burning within me, so bright, so beautiful. Logan, help me." I don't know how, he thinks. I've been lying, of course. Carol isn't all right. She knows it. And so we see these stars in her eyes. So something has happened. She looks normal, but appearance don't matter beans. Her sense no longer human. That scares us both. So whatever tinkering and experimentation the brood did with their evolutionary technology has changed and altered Carol, but it isn't until the next issue that we'll learn what's happened to her. So she cinches up this Shi'ar cloak that Wolverine's brought her, and grabs one of these brood weapons, and she says, "Strange. After all the sleazoids put me through, you'd think I'd be weak, physically shot to pieces, but I feel better than I have in ages," literally bursting with energy. So after Rogue's permanent absorption of Carol's powers as Miss Marvel, she hasn't had any superpowers. She's just been simply human, but with, of course, her training. And now Claremont has configured the storyline in order to give her new powers, but what they are we'll learn in the next issue. So off they go to rescue the other X-Men, but Wolverine knows that all of them have been implanted with brood eggs. Not Carol, she wasn't implanted, but the X-Men have. Meanwhile, back on Earth, and this is interesting here, the X-Mansion is being rebuilt. It was destroyed back in issues 152, 153, the issues where the Hellfire Club attacked the X-Mansion using Sentinels, and it was trashed. So now it's being rebuilt, and you can see here these little kind of drones that are involved in the rebuilding. So there aren't human beings involved in rebuilding the X-Mansion. And what are the origins of those drones? My guess is that they're Shi'ar, and that they've been lent in order to rebuild the X-Mansion quickly. So a transportation beam from the Starjammer drops Corsair and Havoc down to the surface of the planet. Lorna there reuniting with her lover Alex Summers and asking for news. And Alex says the news is lousy. The X-Men and Empress Lilandra have been kidnapped. Lilandra's sister Deathbird is making a bid to seize the Shi'ar throne. That whole galactic empire is coming apart at the seams as everyone chooses sides. Evidently Deathbird allied herself with a race of aliens from beyond known space, the Brood. The price of their aid was the X-Men's lives. Deathbird delivered, and the Brood immediately took them to their homeworld, wherever the blazes that is. Heaven only knows their fate. So Havoc lashes out in frustration that he can't do anything to help. And then this is really interesting, Corsar's reaction. So Corsar is Christopher Summers, recently revealed to Scott to be his father. And this is what he thinks here. An energy bolt. Are we under attack? And here in the narrative caption, this is really interesting. Corsar reacts automatically with the speed of thought, using the phasing jewels on his gloves. So these aren't just ornamentation on his gloves, they're functional. Using the phasing jewels on his gloves to summon his hand weapons. In a split second, he's ready for action. So now he's armed. But of course, he realizes as he turns his head that it was Sun using his powers in frustration. But Moira comes out and says, "You seem to be a mite nervous, Major. Better nervous than dead, Dr. McTaggart. Good point. Might I ask your plans? My son has been kidnapped," he says. "I intend to rescue him or avenge him. Alex will want to go with you," says Moira. And he responds thoughtfully, "I won't let him. Much as I'd like him by my side, if anything has happened to Scott or happens to me, at least Alex will be safe. Also, this will be a killing mission. I'm used to that. Alex isn't. I don't want him to learn." So that is a difference between father and sons. The sons have been influenced by Professor X and his philosophy of zero killing. But Christopher Summers, his 20 years in the Shi'ar Empire, is a different man altogether and is prepared to kill when necessary only. So away he goes, and Moira also expresses her fears for Professor X. Professor X is still recovering from his psychic battle with the Brood implant within him. That still hasn't been dealt with, that there is an implant in him. And she's fearing for the Professor because he's broken now, has lost his telepathic abilities temporarily, and is distraught at the fact that he can't help his X-Men. So here we switch now to, it's been established in the previous issue that this wavy border for the panels indicates a type of nightmare fantasy that a character might be having. That's what Wolverine had in the previous issue, so now it's Cyclops' turn. But just great art on this page from Dave Cockrum. You can see again his imagination with the strange alien organic flora and fauna of the Brood homeworld. So Cyclops is running from them in his X-Men costume. Each time like optic blasts KO one of them, another hunter pops up to take his place. I hope the rest of the X-Men are alright if they're in the same fix. And then it seems the X-Men appear, and he's still dealing with those Brood, but when he turns around, he finds his greeting for his friends becomes a strangled cry of horror and denial, because his friends have been transformed into the Brood. "What have you done with the X-Men?" he asks. "My dear Cyclops," says Storm Brood, "we are the X-Men." So let's continue, get past the advertisements. So he starts blasting away at them, and then one of them provides him with a mirror and says, "Scream denials till your lungs burst and your heart cracks, Cyclops. That will change nothing. Your fate is sealed, your metamorphosis inevitable. Look." So he doesn't know that he has a queen egg implanted within him. So he's seeing all of this symbolically in this kind of dream nightmare that he's having. And then these huge hands pick him up out of the midst of the melee of the X-Men Brood, and it's Professor X. "Am I losing my mind?" he asks. "Am I already insane?" And so he asks for help, and the professor says, "Such aid was given when I first trained you, Cyclops. Therein lies your salvation. All the images are phantoms, real and threatening only so long as he allows them to be so. Xavier is the most powerful telepath on Earth. From the beginning, he trained the X-Men to resist psionic attacks. Cyclops draws on all he's learned, on courage proven on scores of battlefields, on strength he never knew he possessed, and wakes." And I like the way that Cockrum here has the wavy panel borders move in fragments here to Cyclops' head. It's kind of indicating that the dream has ended, the nightmare has ended, and he wakes up. That's nicely done. A dream, it was a dream, thank heaven. Images fading so fast, can't hold on to them. I don't really want to. So he gets up and goes out and sees that he's supposed to be on Lilandra's throne world, but this looks nothing like the professor's descriptions. So the scales have fallen from his eyes, and he sees truly the world as it is, that it's not the Shi'ar throne world. And then he comes upon Storm, and she's in a trance. So he doesn't want to disturb her. He steps forward, then freezes as before his disbelieving eyes. Energy coalesces around Aurora into the form of one of the creatures from his nightmares. The young queen smiles at him. So there is a red color hold here, an overlay on Storm's face of a brood. You can just about make it out. It's not the clearest in this panel. And the young queen smiles at him, and a bolt of lightning splits the sky. The astral image fades. Turn the page, and then Storm is crying. That was Storm's doing. Is she dreaming like I was? What does all this mean? What's been done to us? I have to wake her. So they don't know that they've all been implanted with brood eggs. And Storm here is perturbed. I'm lost, bereft of myself, she says, and at war with myself without knowing why. And that's because there is that brood egg within her. So finally, Logan arrives with Carol too. And Logan says regarding his skin, it ain't a pretty story, and it can wait. So he's not prepared to tell them yet about the implantations. So now the question is what to do next. And Wolverine is the one who's got a plan, which is unexpected in one sense because Cyclops is the strategist and leader. But Wolverine has more information because he's been free of the illusions spun by the brood for longer. And he says the plan is swipe Lilandra's yacht. So Cyclops is surprised. It's here? Not quite. So here this is really interesting. The Sleazoid city is built into the carcass of one of their living starships. The skeleton's so flaming big, we saw that in the previous issue in the big double-page spread. Its bones reach above the breathable atmosphere. Lil's yacht is moored to the top of one of the main ribs, so that's what we're seeing here. We reach it, we take it, we gone. The quartet goes to some of the team's other members, and soon. So here they are again, more of this strange kind of environment that Cockrum has imagined for the Brood homeworld. And what's happening is the other members of the X-Men are still seeing the Brood homeworld as Shi'ar. So Colossus here, for example, sees the world around him as Shi'ar, doesn't see what we the readers are seeing and what Wolverine and Cyclops can see. And there's something interesting here as well, which is like Wolverine is leading the way. He's following by scent Lilandra's location. And this is an interesting bit that emerges from Carol's dialogue here regarding this environment that Cockrum has designed. Fascinating, she says. These corridors don't appear to be constructed, but the result of some natural organic process. And that's really interesting because, again, this anticipates what would come in James Cameron's Aliens film, where it's revealed that the aliens secrete some kind of resin that constructs the environment around them. And we're getting that here from Claremont in relation to the Brood. Very, very interesting. And what Peter says here is interesting too. To me, they feel like normal hallways. And when I touch the walls, I feel metal because he's still hypnotized by the Brood. And Wolverine here is thinking, I should tell Psyche about the eggs the X-Men are hosting, but I can't, not yet. And how do I tell him the rest? That my body's healing factor destroyed the egg implanted in me, that I'm fine? Suppose there's no cure for the others? What then? Do I watch my friends transform into sleazoids? Or do I kill them? And so that's the moral conundrum that he's wrestling with. And now they come up to a branch in the tunnels. One leads to Lilandra, Wolverine's sense, and the other one, cripes, he exclaims, we hit the jackpot. The Queen's down there, the Brood's great mother. We nail her, we'll cripple the whole outfit. So again, in anticipation of the last act of James Cameron's Aliens, some years in the future. So here, there's a philosophical disagreement between Cyclops and Wolverine that goes back to their earliest encounters. Leave her be, says Cyclops. Wolverine, that isn't why we're here. And Wolverine says, this is no time for your flaming namby-pamby rules, Summers. This is war. And Cyclops responds, the X-Men don't kill, Logan. But Carol says, gentlemen, I suggest you postpone your discussion because they've got company. So the big cadre of Brood hunters arrives. It's time for a fight again. So everybody using their powers, Colossus armoring up, punching out those Brood. Carol here saying her blaster won't do much good here. You guys hold the fort. She'll go after Lilandra down the other tunnel. So now more action here. Wolverine lashing out at the Brood. He's determined, he wants to get to the Queen's chamber. But Cyclops says, I told you, forget about her. Not hardly, bub. Wolverine, we have to stay together. You want me, pal? You follow me, he says. And now here we see the Queen here. We saw her in the previous issue, but in humanoid form. And here we see her in her true form. And again, so many shades of the upcoming, in 1986, James Cameron Alien film. Yeah, so interesting, the coincidences, or which way the influence was running with that particular film. So the Queen twigs that Wolverine's no longer implanted with an egg. Butcher, she exclaims, I sense no life within you. The implant is no more. Yup, crying shame, ain't it? Hold that pose, sleazy. I'll do the same for you. Just great, just really amusing dialogue that Claremont comes up for Wolverine. So he's launching himself at the Queen. And finally, the scales drop from Colossus's eyes. These creatures, they're not Lilandra's race. My vision, my mind are clearing, he thinks, in time to see how critical our situation truly is. I'm glad Kitty's not here. I fear this may prove to be the X-Men's last stand. So where is Kitty Pryde? Well, let's get beyond these advertisements. We'll see soon what's going on with the second X-Men team. This is a great page here. Everybody blasting away at the Brood. Lilandra arrives to back up Cyclops, Wolverine, and Colossus. This is a really cool panel here of Colossus tackling the Brood and Wolverine taking them apart with his adamantium claws. And again, Cyclops ordering them to retreat, and Wolverine disagreeing, saying, no way, Buster, I don't leave a job before it's finished. How about I carry you out, mister, says Cyclops. You're welcome to try. Staying here could finish us all. We're as good as dead already, thanks to the Queen. Now, Wolverine doesn't expand on that. He's almost given it away about the implants in the other X-Men. At least killing her balances the scales. Do what you like, Psych. I'm staying. Great use of magenta there as he's moving into an even deeper berserker rage. Great art on that page. Interesting layout on this one, this long vertical panel. What's happening here with the other X-Men team trio here, led by Storm, is they're making their way to Lilandra's yacht, which, remember, is moored above the breathable atmosphere. So she's taking them up so high, and then what they're going to do is Nightcrawler's going to teleport him and Kitty the rest of the way. So Storm here thinks we're still miles below the yacht. Teleporting that distance by himself could be a strain for Nightcrawler. Carrying Kitty, though small though she is, may prove more than either of them can bear. If so, we're doomed. But she's got troubles of her own. A Brood patrol craft shooting at her, so she thinks she's got to draw it away from the yacht. She says says to herself she'll draw it into the lower atmosphere, then create wild weather patterns to blind its sensors. That should buy Kitty and Nightcrawler the rest of the time they need. So he manages to teleport them the miles to the hull of the yacht, but he can't teleport inside because He doesn't know the inside of the ship intimately, so he's here staying out on the hull. She's only minutes to reach the airlock and pull me inside before I freeze to death or suffocate. So he's above the breathable atmosphere, but he's not in outer space. So he's got some time to survive there out on the hull of the yacht. And now these are great pages, like going inside the ship. Kitty emerges inside at the airlock. And remember, she's got information on the Shi'ar and their technology that was given to her by Professor X telepathically a few issues earlier. But she's caught by one of the brood on board the yacht. Halt, human. It's a great panel. And again, really, really nice detailing for the scaliness of the texture of the brood's exoskeleton as well. So Kitty here, taken by surprise. The brood striking at her with its stingers, double stingers. And this is her first encounter with a brood, a sleazoid. She thinks to herself, Aurora and Wolverine told me about them, but I never imagined they'd be so horrible. Watch it, he's good with those stingers. So she's got a plan to get to the airlock, because of course she's got to let Nightcrawler in, and the brood has complicated the whole business. You're trapped, alien, the brood says to her. That's what he thinks. He must not have seen me phase through the hull. I still recall everything Professor X taught me about the Shi'ar. Their airlocks are all based on a common design. The outer hatch won't open unless the inner one is closed, and vice versa. That's my next move. Once Kurt's okay, then we'll tackle this sleazoid. So in she goes into the room between the airlocks, but the brood follows her in before the door shuts. Now what? Everything's set. If I cycle the airlock and phase, I should be able to hold on while the explosive decompression voids the sleazoid from the ship. And this is really interesting. Again, it is Claremont pointing out the different morality that the X-Men have. But that'd be murder, she thinks. I can't, even for a monster like the brood. Stand away from the controls, says the brood. That's a great close-up on the brood's toothy, disgusting, monstrous face. You go back the way you came or we're both dead. You're bluffing? Call me. So we'll see what the brood does. Calls her bluff. And then she becomes intangible. And what happens here, Kitty lunges for the inner hatch, phasing right through the guard. Enraged, he twists frantically in midair in a desperate, futile attempt to grab her. In the process, one of his flailing tentacles slaps the control panel. The lock cycles, and he's gone. So he undoes himself accidentally, and that means that Kitty doesn't have to work through that moral dilemma any further. The brood is ejected from the airlock and dies. So, but she thinks to herself, I didn't want this. I didn't mean it. I know he probably deserved his fate, that he'd have killed me without hesitation, that Wolverine would say I did right, but I'm not Wolverine, and I don't want to become like him. So she pulls Nightcrawler in, and he is like a block of ice frozen to the marrow. So she utters a silent prayer to let that the Lord will let her friend live. And then we're back with the fight down on Brood World. Wolverine still going at it, making his way right up to the Queen. And the Queen says to him, strike, mammal, but know that my life is not as yours, nor is my death at your hands the true death. In the end, I shall triumph. So what does she mean by that? Cyclops says here, Wolverine's reached the Queen, but he wants Wolverine to come back. You're a fool, Cyclops, says Lilandra. This is good. This time Wolverine is in the right. We fight a war against the deadliest of enemies. There's no place here for chivalry or honor. Only death, life, defeat, victory. So Wolverine gets ready to strike with his adamantium claws. My sentiments exactly, Lil. Bye, babe. But just at that moment, transported out. Aboard the yacht. And then the yacht blasts free of its mooring. Ignition, liftoff. So they're away. Yeah, that's a great action sequences in the second half of this issue. And now it's already the last page. At full thrust, the Zri Shar boosts out of Sleaze World's atmosphere and away from its sun. So they're free, but there's a problem. They're still too deep within the solar gravity well to shift into warp space. While we remain at sublight velocities, we're vulnerable. I think that's Lilandra speaking. Is your yacht armed? Asks Cyclops, and she says yes, but we're no match for a true warcraft. Our best hope lies in speed and surprise, but that surprise will not last. The distances involved are too great. We may have caught local planetary defenses off guard, but the outsystems units will be waiting for us. So they've still got problems. They're not out of the fire just yet. And now Wolverine's enraged about having been pulled from killing the Queen. Cyclops, 10 more seconds, 5 Bob, and I could have had her. If you'd helped me, Summers, we could have finished the Queen at the start. At least then we'd have accomplished something. So Kitty asks the key question for the rest of the X-Men. Wolverine, why are you so angry? Why do you hate the Queen so? I'm glad you didn't kill her, she says. He faces his friends, his pain evident, mistaken by the X-Men for berserker rage over what he alone knows and must now tell. He looks at each of them in turn and begins to speak when all guns open fire. So the yacht is targeted by some alien system here. But which one is it? We don't know yet. We don't know. Is it the Brood? We don't know. Is it some other alien race? Is it Deathbird? We don't know yet. Next issue, Binary Star. Remember what I said? That there's going to be a big revelation regarding what happened to Carol. And that's coming up in the next issue. So there you go. And an advertisement here for the crossover between the Uncanny X-Men and the new Teen Titans. With a very cool creative team of Chris Claremont, Walt Simonson, and Terry Austin. No letters page in this issue. And that is the end of the issue. Well, I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on this ongoing Brood X-Men in Space saga. The second last issue by Dave Cockrum. On the way is Paul Smith in another issue's time. Let me know what you think of this particular chapter of the storyline in the comments section. If you enjoyed my review, please like the video on YouTube. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.